All right, so the title of this presentation is called Your Classroom Reimagined, Tailoring Talk Structures for Diverse Learners. My name is Candace Harden, and a little bit about me is that I teach 5th grade and I also consult part-time. Additionally, I work as an adjunct professor at Kentucky State University. So as you see on your screens, I was recipient of the Hero in Education Award last year through Class Act, and also I received the Hilliard Lyons School Excellence Award. And the main reason for receiving those awards is for the strategies that I'm going to share with you today. So get excited because you're going to get to take a step inside of my classroom and really understand how to engage the learners that sit before you. Just some Zoom housekeeping. Please keep your microphones muted and keep your camera on if possible, because there will be parts in this presentation where you will be participating within the structure of what I have. So if I can see you, it makes it a little bit easier for me to gauge your responses. There is a raise your hand feature if you were unaware. If you go to the bottom of your Zoom, you will see a panel and it has reactions. So if I ask you a question, and since we're all muted, if you want to raise your virtual hand, you can just click that icon and I can see very quickly who might be agreeing with what I'm saying or something like that. If you have questions while I'm presenting, put them in the chat. So even if I don't get to you directly, I will be able to get to you afterward because they will be saved in there. And once again, if you have not already signed in and you're just joining our Zoom, then go ahead and do so. All right, Zoom, Kaboom, who's in the room? If you are a teacher of kindergarten through 5th graders, could you please raise your virtual hands so we can see who is in the room? All right, Miss Jenkins raised her hand. Perhaps she is the only one. All right, if you teach middle school, 6th grade through 8th grade, please raise your virtual hands. Okay, I see 3 hands were raised. All right, shout out to middle school. If you are a high school educator at grades 9 through 12, please raise your virtual hand. 4 people are in high school. Nice. So high school is the heaviest in here today. If you are an academic coach at your school, please raise your hand, your virtual hand. Perhaps no one is. And if you are a school administrator, please raise your virtual hand. All right, so we kind of now have a feel for who is here on this Zoom call. If you are currently teaching right now during non-traditional instruction, raise your hand. Who's online, getting used to this whole new way of education? Okay, 3 people. And some more. All right. And lastly, if you cannot wait to learn some new ways to engage your students through talk structures, raise your hand. Yay! We have lots of people who are ready. That's excellent. So let me quickly go over some things that we will be reviewing or perhaps learning for the first time today. Culturally responsive education. I don't know if you all have heard of that. Some people say culturally responsive teaching. Those are used interchangeably, but that is the main focus of the work that we're doing. That drives everything. I'm also gonna take a breakdown of student agency and voice and what that can look like in your classroom. Culturally responsive talk structures. I'm going to specifically show you and teach you things that you can implement into your classrooms, whether it be virtually or even in person. Then we're going to kind of do some reflection, brainstorming work about how you can reimagine your classroom through the lens of culturally responsive education. And then we're going to have a reflection at the end to wrap it all up. I would encourage you to get a notepad and a pen or pencil to kind of take notes on some of these things. I will try to pace myself nicely so I don't go too fast, but there might be something that really sticks out to you. You might want to just jot it down. All right, so to kind of establish the purpose of this work, our challenge truly is to unpack our current communications practices that we have in our classroom or even online as a way to improve student to student and student to teacher interaction and collaboration in the classroom. So I really want you to think about yourself as an educator and the ways in which you engage students. And if you're in an administrative role or coaching role, the ways in which you engage teachers even. This is a really important quote to me that kind of encompasses what we're doing today. Benjamin Franklin said, "Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I remember, but involve me and I learn." So we are really trying to involve our students, not just teach at them or teach around them, but really have them immersed in the process of co-creation and student leadership so that we can have better outcomes. The first part of this is going to be all about culturally responsive education. Now, I wonder if you've seen this graphic before. So here in this graphic, just take a moment and look. Notice the word. Notice what's going on in the picture. Do you see any challenges? So it says equality, but it's not equal because we see the smallest child can't even see over the fence. He doesn't even know what's going on in the baseball game. The middle child and the tallest child can, but this is an example of equality because they all have the same size box, but they all don't have the same access, okay? Let's look at the second picture. This one represents equity. What do you notice? So now the tallest child has shared his box or stool with the smallest child. This is equitable. This is according to their needs. So now everyone can see the baseball game. And this is oftentimes in education where the work stops. But I'm going to push you to really consider taking it a step further, and that is liberation. What do you notice in this picture? I would actually like some people to share out. So I've taken you through equality, through equity, and now we're at the liberation. So if you would like to unmute yourself and share out what you notice and what this means for the work you do as an educator, I would love to hear from you.
I have a response. I see with equity, but with I'm sorry, quality, you're being taught the same equity. You're changing your instruction to meet whatever the need is so that there is success. And then with liberation, you're actually removing barriers that prevented them.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. As you can see, there is no fence anymore. There's no barrier. Everyone can see the baseball game. There's no need for anyone to be on stools. And this is what true liberation looks like. I want us to take this image and really hold it in your mind and think about how can I transfer this concept into my school, into my classroom, so that your students feel liberated, so that the teachers feel liberated, so that everybody can move forward. All right, I'm wondering if anybody has also seen this image. So, sorry, this is a cultural iceberg. So I want you to think about, how are students like a cultural iceberg? There are things that we can definitely see when we enter our buildings. We perhaps can gauge how old they are. We can definitely see the clothes they're wearing, the gender they are, even the language they speak, physical characteristics that they have, behaviors that they exhibit. Now let's take a look at the things that are a little less visible. Have you learned your children's body language, their favorite foods, cultural festivals, musical preferences? These are the things that are a little less visible. And even further beneath the surface are the things that are just completely not visible at all. And that could be their family attitudes and values, maybe their sexual identity even, political views, assumptions that they might have, their role in their family. I want to encourage you that in order to effectively implement culturally responsive education, you have to get at the things that are beyond what you can literally see. And by learning our students and spending time with them and engaging them in experiences that peel back the layers of them that these things are, that will help us be more effective when we show up for them in the classroom. So this is just some reflective time to think about you as an educator and what you already do. And then I'm going to help push you to what you can start doing. Here's a picture of an actual iceberg. Look how massive it is under the water. Keep that in mind when you're teaching. Like, there are so many things that our children come with that we just don't even know about. And we should have an asset mind to think, okay, how can I take that and capitalize on it and help them move forward and honor it and celebrate it and share it? All right. Now that we've done some time to reflect, I would like for you all to participate in this activity called Agree or Disagree. There will be statements that appear. They're all related to culturally responsive education. You're either going to put your thumb up in your camera or you're going to put your thumb down in your camera. And based on how everyone responds will warrant if I go in depth explaining it, or if I'm like, okay, great, we all have that one as an understanding. So the first statement says, culturally responsive teaching is a new type of instruction that is relevant to only low income and students of color. Okay, so I see some people are raising their virtual hand. For this activity, if you could put a thumbs up or a thumbs down, that would be better. Okay, so thank you. Yay! This is wonderful. I see the majority of you have your thumbs down, which lets me know, for those who have their camera on. If you could turn your camera on, that would be really helpful during this part of the presentation. But yes, you are right. If you put your thumb down, culture responsive is not just for low income students or students of color. This is a huge misconception. So I'm glad that we're all on the same page with that. All right, next one says, culturally responsive teaching leads to fewer stereotypes about children because the teachers are trained to address their needs. Thumbs up or agree or thumbs down. I see some people are rereading. All right, so for those I can see, you have your thumbs up, and that's awesome because yes, this definitely is an agreement. It does diminish stereotypes, and it does help you to address your students' needs. Great job. Next, we have culturally responsive teaching is a bag of tricks that minimizes the difficulty of teaching some diverse students. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Ooh, so this one has some mixed reviews, I see, for those who are participating. All right. Thank you for sharing. So I will tell you that this is a disagreement. It is not a bag of tricks. Some people think, okay, for me to be culturally responsive, let me pull out a worksheet that talks about Chinese festivals or something. Like it's none of that. Or this type of education is only for African American and Latino students. It's also not that either. One, it's for everyone. Two, it's not a bag of tricks. It's more of a structure. It's more of a way to build on students' assets and build their learning capacity. So this one is a disagreement, okay? Let's go to the next one. It says, culturally responsive teaching requires that teachers master details of all the cultures of students represented in the classroom. What do you all think? All right, some people are rereading. Wonderful. Okay, so for those of you who disagreed, yes, I only saw one person who had an agreement. Yes, it culturally responsive teaching does not. This is a disagree. I'm so sorry. It does not require you. The key word is all. It does not require you to master all the cultures of the students represented in your classroom. One, it's unreasonable for you to master. That's a big word, to master someone in 9 months or so. So you don't have to be proficient in every single culture that's represented. Should you get to know them? Absolutely. Should you strive to understand the things that are beyond the surface level? Absolutely. But you do not have to master it for everybody. So that is actually a disagree. Next one says, culturally responsive teaching is when students are academically successful while celebrating and maintaining their own unique cultural values, traditions, and beliefs in the classroom. Agree with that or disagree? Okay, yes, 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 yes. Wonderful educators. That is definitely an agree. You are trying to celebrate them, but not trying to assimilate them so they can maintain who they still are. Wonderful. And the last one says, culturally responsive teaching is the same as multicultural education and social justice. Agree with that or disagree? That's loaded. All right, it looks like the majority are, everybody's disagreeing. Yay, this is the first time ever that everyone has disagreed with that statement. You are absolutely right. They are not the same at all. In fact, let me show you how. So I want to help reduce a misconception about these three types of approaches. So multicultural education is when you are celebrating diversity. So some schools have international culture fairs, or maybe students cook meals from other cultures, or you learn other words from different languages, or people come in with their native dresses or different things like that. That's multicultural education. And it's learning about cultures kind of in isolation, but you're still celebrating them. And it's usually cultures that are not the majority of the culture in your building. So that's what multicultural education is. And if best practiced, whatever is learned will be visually represented throughout the school. I've seen some schools who have globes and they have students' pictures from where their families are from all over the world, like things like that. That's multicultural education. Okay, lock that in. So social justice is something altogether different. So what this is being able to teach children in a way that they are able to adjust their lens, the way they see the world, and the things that are happening. And this is a really great time for this now because there's a lot going on in our country. For them to notice things that are unfair or unjust, and to take action behind it. So it's not even just the teaching about it, but it's the doing something about it. A lot of curriculums that are social justice oriented, they have like action research and then they do something in the community with what they learned. That's social justice. If anybody needs me to slow down, please let me know. So multicultural education, social justice. Now let's move on to culturally responsive education, which is the focus of what we're doing today. This work has more depth in a lot of respects than the other two. This is all about building the learning capacity of the individual student. It leverages from the things that they already come to school with, and it builds upon them. So it's not necessarily teaching them about diverse groups or helping them take action per se on things that are unjust, but it really speaks to who they are as a learner, and it pushes them forward. Okay, so those are the differences. I'm going to move forward. I know that's a lot of information, and we're probably processing, deconstructing some things maybe that we thought, and it will take some time to really like hold on to that. All right, so a guru in the field of culturally responsive education is Zaretta Hammond. If you don't know about her, I would say get to know her. I have a book recommendation at the end of my presentation, but this is called Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain. Her approach is more so from the science background of it, like culturally responsive education in the science fields for K through college, really, learners. And a lot of the things that I have in my presentation come from this book. So she is a person to know. She says it's about building the learning capacity of the individual student. There's a focus on leveraging the affective and the cognitive scaffolding that the students bring with them. Additionally, it says the simplest way to judge whether your teaching is culturally responsive, excuse me, my camera is blocking some of the text, is if your English language learners and your students of color, your immigrant students, if they're actually learning. You know how you know that? Data. If they are not succeeding academically in your classroom, your approach might not be culturally responsive. So that's just like a moment to self-reflect, like, are all groups of students actually learning? Is this evidenced in my data? If not, then perhaps you could change your approach. All right, so based on what we did with the agree and disagree activity and what we just learned from the definition from Zaretta Hammond, I would like you to think about, okay, what have I already done? What am I currently doing that supports culturally responsive education? So think about some experiences that you have engaged your students in, and I would like for us to share. This is a very powerful moment because one, when other people share, it can trigger your thoughts. Two, it can give you ideas of things that you might not be doing that you can start to do. I'll give an example to just start it off. So in my 5th grade classroom, we read a book called The Name Jar. It's about a girl. Her name is Unhe. She comes from Asia to America. She's very uncomfortable with her name, so she tells everyone, I forgot what she said her name was, something equivalent to like Ashley, something simple for people to pronounce because she was tired of them mispronouncing her name. So we took that book and leveraged from it. It's on the culturally responsive book list, and they did a name project where they had to share out what their name meant, what its origins are, why their parents gave it to them. And we learned so much about things below the surface of the water that we did not know about each other just from doing that project. So we leveraged from a text, we had class discussions, we reflected on that, then they did a project and they had to present that project to the class. So that's an example of culturally responsive education. So if anybody wants to unmute themselves and share out something that they're doing in their classroom, that would be wonderful. I'm sure we could all learn from you. Anybody want to share?
I teach science, so I'm wondering if, like a lot of my kids come from a rural background, So agriculture. And I try to incorporate those ideas into my lessons when I'm teaching scientific ideas, just to help build on the background. But I'm kind of at loss because I didn't come from that background. But I try, and would that be an example of culturally responsive teaching?
Yes. Absolutely, it would be. So to do this work, and thank you for sharing, that was a wonderful example. So your kids are in an agricultural context. In order to do this work, like teachers have to take the time to teach themselves before they can lead children. So if that is the demographic that occupies most of your school, you have to be the expert first. One, kids will be like, wow, you know that about, what I'm experiencing. It's a connector. And then two, it helps you better structure your lessons and experiences so that they can dive deeper in that type of learning. I know we've talked about that through the book of Cesar Chavez, and there's a movie about him too. And so a lot of children who come from migrant farming families and even agricultural families, Kentucky's really big on farming. That was a way for me to tap in, and then they were able to dig deeper after that platform had been set. So I think what you're doing is great. I think you just need to add some more depth to it. And I saw somebody had the name jar book while I've been presenting. That's really cool. Does anybody else want to share?
I wanted to share. We've used that book too, and we kind of did. We had, after we read the book and we kind of pressed through it and debriefed it, names that they would give that friend, but then they also, the own student, they wrote down nicknames they had been called before that were not positive. And so some of the negative names they've been called were maybe ethnic based or socioeconomic based. And so it was really good to kind of talk about that and kind of venue to kind of talk about how kids felt when they've been given names that they necessarily didn't approve of.
Was there anything that you learned about your students that you were like, wow, I would have perhaps never known that if I didn't provide this type of learning experience?
We did it later in the year. It would not have been something I would have done at the beginning. We did it probably back in February. But I think talking through it, a lot of the students learn from, how do I act when I might be having this nickname that makes me uncomfortable? And maybe it's a nickname they've had for a while, but they just didn't have the venue to speak to it. So reflection and realization from it.
Okay, that's wonderful. So you talked about the social pieces and how they can interact with people who might have names that they're unfamiliar with or, sound different, how to respect other people's cultures in that way. I think that's awesome. And I too feel like that's a loaded, powerful book. And depending on your grade level, depends on like how you would present it and the things that you would teach. I think that's a great start. I feel like that book could last a month, honestly. There's a lot of activities and learning experiences that can be had. So I think that's a great start. And I think you can take it even deeper because we're building on their assets. So that's wonderful. All right. Does anybody else want to share before we move on? Hopefully you're generating some ideas of things that you already do. I don't want you to feel like this work is like something additional. There are things that we've already practiced that you're like, oh, I didn't even realize I was being culturally responsive. And then there'll be things that you can add on to. All right, so one thing that we do in my classroom is we do a lot of praise because confidence and competence are connected. So when they feel proud, they are more apt to participate and be more resilient when the work gets hard. We talk about the productive struggle. So I just wanted to teach you all really quickly. And for those who are in middle and high school, I teach middle and high school over the summer. And this might feel a little young, but when I tell you, middle schoolers, high schoolers, I've even done this in my college classes, they eat it up. They really do, because ultimately people just want to be recognized and affirmed. And this is a way of doing that. So for all of those who just shared, I appreciate you. And we call this a bomb cheer. And so what you do is you put your hands together and you say, tick, 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 boom, you're the bomb. And then you point at the person. And when you have a whole room full of people doing that, the student's like, oh my goodness, I am so special and I did well. And then they'll, continue on. And when I tell you, it takes less than 5 seconds. And then you just keep teaching. It's not an interruption or anything. So I'm gonna do it one more time. You just put your hands together and you tick 4 times, tick, 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 boom, you're the bomb. And you point at the person. That puts energy in your room. That helps build a culture. And that helps keep your teaching engaging. So great job to everybody who just shared out. All right. The next piece I would like to go over with you all is student agency and voice. There's a quote by Zaretta that really stands out to me, and it says, if we are going to push dependent learners in positive ways to stretch themselves, we have to offer a safe community for them to do it in. So think about what that really means to you in your classroom. All right, so we are all social. And probably during this whole pandemic, you realize, for those of you maybe who are more social or more extroverted, how important that is, because we've been in isolation. So students are the same way. And I wonder how many times we as educators structure opportunities for them to be social without it being too mandated or confined. So it says, one of the primary ways to develop student agency and voice is through language and talk. We all know children love to talk. That's half the reason why they probably get in trouble, is because they're talking too much. So how can we reimagine education in a way that they can still talk a lot, but it's all purposed? Let me move my screen. Okay. It says also, did you know when students are allowed to talk and it's constantly in an orderly turn and talk, pair and share way, it doesn't resemble the way most culturally and linguistically diverse students engage in discourse? It doesn't feel natural for them. The teacher begins to dominate the conversational space when this is the approach. I don't know how many times you've been teaching, you're like, turn and talk to your neighbor. And then you call their attention back, but they're still talking. When we talk and we go to our family's house, we don't raise our hands. We don't really even turn and talk to our partner per se, like not in a way that's like dictated. So when children come to school, that's in opposition to what feels natural to them. So I challenge you to reimagine your class in a way that you have, and I'm going to show you some ways to do this, talk structures that allow for more fluid speech that's uninterrupted, but still focused, so that students can be more immersed in the learning experience. That's a different way of thinking. I will tell you, in my classroom, it has literally skyrocketed my data. Like just simply changing the way I frame their conversational experiences, we are able to dig way deeper, way deeper. And that also requires really strong classroom management too. Like this doesn't work if your classroom management is not on point. All right, so we're gonna hear from Zaretta. I have a video to share with you. Before you listen to this video, I want you to think about how you provide opportunities for talk structures versus task structures. So I feel like as educators, we're like, all right, here's the prompt. This is what I want you to do. And work with someone or work independently or think through this and let me know how I can support you along the way, versus like a communication protocol, more of an inquiry-based learning experience where they can kind of unfold and discover it for themselves, and then you're there more as a facilitator, to help guide that learning. So I want you to shift your mind and think, okay, how can I go from giving tasks to talk structures, and how can that make my classroom learning a lot more rigorous? Zaretta says, I'm trying to move the camera. Zaretta says, when students have the chance to narrate their lives, put language to their experience, and process their thinking through discourse, they begin to notice and name their own competence. So I'm going to take you to a video of her sharing specifically this. And I want you to share with me after the video is over what you all think. Alrighty. Let me take it back. This will be 3 minutes. I'm trying to make sure my sound is checked. We're good to go.
Our experiences. But here's the thing I think is really important to remember.
Can everybody hear?
Because only the learner learns, the learner has to believe he or she can. The work out of the University of Chicago really talks about the idea of what does it mean to have academic mindset? And that the student has to believe he is capable of doing that. Creating that intellectual environment is really what's at the core of culturally responsive teaching. Not some multicultural kumbaya, let's have, the festival around bread from every country, right? We've all been there. And this rotates through what the child is saying to himself. I belong to this academic community. So that you create a community of learners where that child sees himself as part of that inquiry, trying new things, making things, breaking things, and doing that in community. I can succeed at this, meaning I have a sense of competence. It's not about the right or the wrong answer, particularly with our youngest children. We really have to give them the opportunity to have their hands on things and to ask questions about how something goes or doesn't go. My ability and competence grow with my effort, and this work has value to me. So being able to make sure that we help students really understand that their effort is going to move them forward and that they see the value. This is the whole idea of culturally responsive. What's important about that term is not the culture part, because we have a tendency to stumble, but it's the responsive part, that I see the child and I can understand those cultural displays and I can synchronize myself to them. A lot of times we talk about this. Well, they just need a growth mindset. Poor Carol DeWick has had to come out of retirement to correct us on really what she meant by growth mindset. Right? And the way we talk about grit is as if the children that come to school, particularly diverse students that may be poor, that may come from marginalized and underserved populations, don't already have grit. They have it in spades. It's how do we actually capitalize it? So grit isn't what they need. What they need is the support of the environment that allows them to grow into their competence. Because here's what's real. Competence precedes confidence. A lot of times we think, oh, if we just do something culturally responsive or have multiculturalism, or even if we just do something social justice oriented, that's going to pump the kid up. The kid doesn't need a pep talk. It's that internal conversation that we need to support the child to see that they can do what is in front of them, that they can try new things, that they can learn, because the brain is a learning machine. And when we start with our youngest children, by giving them opportunities to put their hands on things, to see how things work, we are moving toward being more responsive.
All right. So that was Zaretta Hammond. And I'm wondering if anybody has any thoughts that have just popped in their mind that they would like to share about what that video exposed? One key part was how we respond to the children, how we build their learning capacity. Did that speak to anybody or make you think of something that you've done or something you would like to start doing? Okay. Go ahead and move on. Just keep some of the things that she said in mind, because that's really, really some golden nuggets right there. All right, so now we're going to get into the actual strategies that you can implement in your classroom. Culturally responsive talk structures. One of the most important tools for a culturally responsive teacher is instructional conversation. This is what Zaretta said as well. Do you all know that only 60% of elementary and secondary students reported feeling engaged at school? And what's behind this statistic is because they don't feel like their voice is valued. So when they don't have enough opportunities to engage in conversation with the teacher or their peers, they start to feel less engaged. And honestly, this statistic is higher than my personal reality. So I'm sure we probably can relate to our students feeling disengaged in our schools or maybe even in our own classroom. So let's figure out some things we can do to make that better. All right, so the first thing you see here on this slide is a concept called cooperative overlapping. So what this does is it provides space for students to respectfully and naturally jump into conversations. Have you ever been teaching and someone starts talking over you and you're like, be quiet, sit down, you know, you have a reprimand, or another student is talking and they start talking over them. As educators, we like order usually, and we want people to raise their hand, talk one at a time, and things like this. Have you ever reimagined your room in a way, what if no one ever raised their hand? You know what that would look like? In my classroom, we don't really raise hands. And it took me really orienting them from the beginning of the school year, so that way throughout the school year, it flows a lot better. If you hear someone talking and y'all jump in at the same time, and I'm going to show you this in a minute, you can use a talk move. So you don't have to verbally always agree or disagree. You can show by gesturing, or you can talk over them, but there's a way to do it that doesn't feel disrespectful. Or sometimes you like talk at the same time, or sometimes you have to fall back if you and somebody come and it's like a competing voice. It sounds complex, but when you teach them explicitly how to do this over time, it just becomes a fluid experience. Because have you ever been to church and the pastor's talking and people are like, amen, or agreeing and speaking out loud, but he just keeps preaching or teaching? That's kind of how it can be in the classroom, because what that does is it garners more participation. There's an energy that will flow differently when you're able to do that. So that's called cooperative overlapping. It can happen in small group, it can happen in whole group. And I feel like the teacher has to be vulnerable enough that if you're talking and someone is like agreeing with you, that it doesn't feel disrespectful, but you teach them in a way that's actually productive. Okay? Next, we have this whole concept called cogenerative dialogue. So I have a book here by Dr. Christopher Emden, and I have this book posted in the end of the presentation too. And what he talks about in this book is basically how teachers can provide space to elevate the voices of students. So what this looks like is it can be a small group of students. That's how it initially starts off. Or I've even done this whole class. And basically, I'm like, how am I showing up? So they'll say, you know, Miss Harden, when you do this, we really like this. I wish you did more of this. Or Miss Harden, when you say this or make us do this, we really don't like it. And so then I'm like, okay, well, how would you like to do it? And so we are basically creating our classroom environment together. And when that happens, students take more ownership of it and they're able to be more successful in it because their voice has been heard, and that gives it more value. So cogenerative dialogues require the teacher to kind of relinquish some of their power and be able to receive feedback from students. And sometimes it can be uncomfortable. And sometimes students take it too far and they get really excited to tell you about yourself. But you have to put in talk structures to say, okay, this is okay and this is not okay. You know, calm down. Because I've definitely had students try to go in on me, and we have to, you know, practice how to have a co-generative dialogue. But now we're at the point where they will self-check each other. So if someone gets out of order, they'll say, oh, okay, that is not what we talked about. And it just kind of works itself out. All right, so that's cooperative overlapping and co-generative dialogues. Does anybody have any questions about that before I move on to the next two? I don't want to go too fast. Okay. Next one is called mirrors. So this is a whole brain teaching strategy. Could you raise your virtual hand if you've heard of whole brain teaching? Okay, I see 3 people have, 4 people have. Awesome. If you haven't, I would highly encourage you to look that up. So you might want to take a note on whole brain teaching. But basically, this pedagogy involves the child's whole brain. So if they are a visual learner, if they're auditory learner, if they're tactile learner, whatever, it speaks to all of those modalities. One thing that we use a lot in class is called mirrors. I think they call it mirrors and words. So basically, you can turn your mirrors on. This can be teacher-led or it can even be student-led. It's a way for you to review concepts, and it is also a way for you to create gestural ways or creative ways to remember content. And I usually make my students do it. So for an example, I might say, mirrors on. And so everybody would literally like put their hands like this, because in a mirror, you are a reflection. So whatever I do, once my mirrors are on, they have to do. So I might say a fraction has a numerator and a denominator, and then they would repeat it. Mirrors off, and they would do the same thing back to me. They echo it back, and then they turn their mirrors off. And so whatever I do, they do. But what I've noticed is when we put gestures, like just saying a fraction has a numerator and a denominator, when we put gestures to things, I'll see them on assessments like they're engaging their whole brain, so their comprehension and their ability to retain the learning, it hits a whole nother level. And I put on here that we did this with punctuation moves. So for every punctuation mark, we have a sound and a gesture. The period says, skirt. And so when I go past someone, I know that's like crazy, and I'm telling you, high schoolers eat this up too. When I go past somebody and I'm reading one of their narratives or something, and I don't even have to say anything, I could just do the gesture, or I might be like, skirt, and they're like, oh man, let me find where I need to put a period. So it's a really cool way to hold them accountable for what they've learned, and also a way for them to increase their retention of what they're learning. And that's just a few. Like it can be from math, science, you know, ELA, whatever. It works in all type of areas, but it doesn't really require any prep work. For me, when I'm teaching, it's like, it's like somewhere you would highlight, I guess. This is a really important point. Let me turn my mirrors on. They're going to echo back and do everything I do. And then perhaps when they're doing partner work or something like that, and I'll say, okay, what's a fraction again? They're able to say what you said to them. And even students can make up their own gestures and their own definitions and whatever. So it's a powerful piece. It's a powerful verbal communication tool. You can also find this online. If you go to Whole Brain Teaching and type in mirrors, there are videos on YouTube that teach you how to teach this. Okay, so maybe you took a note right there. Another verbal communication is called mic check. I put microphone, you know, to be formal, but we just call it mic check. So basically, you've probably done this before. If you have a talking piece, like perhaps it's a stuffed animal, or maybe you have a literal microphone, or maybe it's a pen or whatever, and it just gives someone the floor. So you have uninterrupted time. So there's cooperative overlapping. There's time and space for that, but there's also time and space for uninterrupted time to talk and to be heard. So we might say mic check, and we might throw a stuffed animal or something to someone, and they stand and they share out, and everybody's like zoned in on them. And this is another way to really help your students focus in, and they might like echo back what that person said to hold them accountable for what they're teaching or sharing. And It's just another way to structure your lesson. So just imagine, these are just 4. I have several, but I didn't want to overwhelm you. These are just 4 things. Just imagine these things being at play, not the co-generative dialogue, but the other 3. Imagine them being at play within one lesson. This is providing students a lot of space to elevate their voice, retain what's being learned, and then reinforce what's being learned to their peers. So, are there any questions about that? I want to make sure that what I have shared is clear. I don't know if it is or not. Okay, so we will move forward. So those are verbal communication styles. And then we have nonverbal. So I want you to just take a moment and read this list because it's lengthy. And you might be thinking, oh, I do that. I do that too. Okay, so some ways that we can non-verbally communicate with our children are think, write, pair, read. So I think we're all familiar with think, pair, share. Think about it, share it to your partner, and then you share it out loud to the class. So this is think about it, write about it. So there's no, oh, I'm going to copy my partner's thoughts. I've already written down what I think. So this is my evidence. So you think about it, you write about it, and then you pair and you read each other's paper. So there's no verbal communication. Like you literally have to read your partner's paper. And a step further would be think, write, pair, read, and to give feedback. So we have a structure in writing for giving feedback, and we might do that, and they give the paper back to the person. Okay, so that's an idea for nonverbal communication structures. Then we have silent dialogues. I wonder if anybody in here has done this before. They call it different things, but basically what you do is you might put a driving question on a sheet of chart paper. Students are in groups and they are responding to the question, and then they are responding to one another, but no one can talk. So it's a silent dialogue, and it's really powerful. And then you have the evidence at the end of your lesson as a teacher to go back and see, okay, are there any misconceptions? Do I need to reteach? Do I need to enrich? Different things like that. So we use this a lot during reading. I pose a question, they respond to the question, and then if they respond to a student, they have to draw a connector, like just a line, because they usually put their comments in bubbles. They'll put a line between their bubble and a peer's bubble, and they'll say, oh, I like what you said, but did you ever consider this? We usually do a praise and a push. That's another model we have. So you don't just say, oh, I like that. I was thinking the same thing. So you have to you can praise them, that's fine, but then you have to push your thinking further. So I like this, but did you ever consider this? Okay, so that's silent dialogue. And then we have chalkboard splash. This is more for like ELA if you are trying to get them to use like more adjectives, like what's the first word that comes to your mind when I put up social justice or whatever. And then they'll chart a bunch of words and then you can go through and talk about them. Then we have human bar graphs. I feel like a lot of people probably have done those before for you to see visually like how your class is feeling about something. So you can do like human bar graphs, and I have on here at the bottom live polls. I don't know if you've ever used any structures through the internet where they can type in their responses, or maybe it's like a Likert scale or like multiple choice, and you can see instantly like what everybody in the class feels. That's a really great way for them to have their voice heard and feel like they're a part of the lesson. We have four corners. I feel like everybody's played four corners, but have you done four corners and write? So they go to the four corners, you might say, you know, how you feel about something and whatever the correct answer is, they go there. You can see visually representing around the room, you know, where your class is at. But then, because sometimes they copy off of each other, you say, okay, now write. Why did you choose this corner? So that's really powerful for a nonverbal. And then we also have participation cards. Have you ever taught a lesson and you've had true false cards or ABCD cards? That's a really great calm way to get your students involved in a lesson without them having to say a single word. And then lastly, we have memes and infographics. At the beginning of the year in reading, we just analyzed memes. It's really cool because that's the social climate we're in. Like, kids are online all the time and they know all about memes. But did you also know they can analyze them and even create their own and even create infographics? Our computer teachers teaches our students about that. So I'm just giving you some examples. I know this is a lengthy list and I've been talking a lot, but I've just given you some examples of ways that you can support nonverbal communication in your class. Does anybody have any questions about that? Or would like to share anything that you've done in your room that you have found successful or maybe even challenging?
Love to do the moving activities and stuff, but then because of time constraints, I struggle with the writing portion and the follow-up. I try to manage that, but I do struggle with those things.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that is a sentiment most teachers share. The writing piece can be timely and sometimes it's overlooked. So I hope that these suggestions, you might be able to incorporate them and have some better experiences with that part of your teaching. Does anybody else want to share? Okay, we can move forward. All right, so the next thing that I would like to suggest implementing in your room is having student teachers. I feel like most people are like, oh, let's actually see. Raise your hand if your students lead instruction often. Raise your virtual hand if your students lead instruction.
Not often, but sometimes.
Sometimes, okay. So maybe it's just sometimes. And that's fine too. So in my classroom, when I'm initially teaching a concept, I lead. If we ever review, it can even be the second day. And this is, developmentally appropriate along the K through 12 continuum. You can gauge it for your grade level. But if I'm reviewing anything, I make my students do it. Every week, we have designated student teachers. This is an opportunity for them to really hone in on their leadership skills and become confident in what they know. So at the beginning of class, we all have, our I will, we will statements, or maybe call them I can statements. Different districts have different lingo, but my students lead that. So they set the purpose for the day. And within those statements are very specific vocabulary, and they go over the vocabulary with them. And they usually turn their mirrors on when they're reviewing that. And that way it really gets in their brain. So this allows them to be respected. This allows them to feel like they are in control. This allows the students to be more engaged, and there's higher retention. We switch classes. So when my students come in, I'm in the back of the class and I just sit down. The student teacher is responsible for settling everyone down and reviewing the I will, we will statements. It's really amazing. I actually want to take you to a video. So class act, when I was a hero in education, they came and videotaped me. And I would like to show you a portion of that on the video of what it looks like when students are leading a class discussion. Hopefully everybody can hear. Just look at the video and see what you notice.
And then we take that and we use it in the classroom. For an example, I have student leaders all the time. There is a shift that happens in my classroom before Christmas break, I would say, where I'm not up in the front teaching all the material. The students are actually teaching each other, but these are on review days. So like I'll introduce a topic and then I have a student teacher leader continue to teach furthermore. So they have an opportunity to allow their talents to be shown. We've had artists decorate things for our classroom. I have a meteorologist, like people who are really into just science and weather. They'll come and report out, what's going on in our community, not even just climate and weather, but just happenings in the Louisville area and happenings in the world. So it's just different experiences like this where students have an opportunity to shine that really hooks them and allows them to leverage from that in their schoolwork because now they believe in themselves. I've had some really challenging.
Okay. So I'm just going to stop it right there. But I hope that you were able to see there was a student in the front of the classroom, the smartboard. There were the I can statements up there, and she was calling on other students to respond. I don't know if you noticed that every time someone responded, they stood up. So I'm going to get to that next. We have a culture in our building now. So I've been able to infiltrate other classrooms, and now this is just the school-wide expectation. When you speak at any point in time, even if it's a very short answer, you stand. You have eye contact. You gesture. You are speaking at a volume that is easily heard, and you are expressive. So we talk about, like, I literally teach inflection and how to have a voice that's engaging. And I know statewide, or I know in JCPS at least, Jefferson County, we have benchmark defenses that students have to do. So 5th, 8th, 12th grade, when they transition to the next level, they literally have to stand before a panel of adults and defend why they should go to the next level. Because we have this structure, this communication structure in place, when they go to defend, they're like, how do your kids know how to just easily talk in front of adults? And that's because since the first day of school, we've been instilling this in them. So by the time it gets to the end of the year, it's not foreign, it's not difficult. So in my room, they stand, they say, Miss Harden in class, I think the answer is da 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 da. Or if there's a student teacher, they will say that student's last name and class. Or sometimes, kids want to be fancy. Maybe they're talking to a bunch of teachers. Greetings, teachers, da 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 da, whatever. And then, depending on if they're in special area or the cafeteria, like, this carries them. This goes with them everywhere. Like, it's just a school-wide expectation. So if you noticed in the video, they were standing, they were speaking, they were looking around when they share out something to people. And you will notice when they start speaking this way, they start writing this way. And when they start writing this way, their scores go up, because I feel like the writing piece of a lot of instruction and assessment, it can be a hindrance. So if you practice orally, it will transfer to their written. Something to note at the bottom of the slide is I explicitly teach them to code switch. Raise your hand if you've heard of code switching. Raise your virtual hand if you've heard of code switching. Okay. Yay, some people have, that's wonderful. This is important work, because as a culturally responsive teacher, you don't want to respond negatively to students. So I've heard people say, I ain't doing that, or what do they say all the time? Bruh, or I don't know, they just chop off word endings, or they use slang and all that stuff. And I've seen some teachers like reprimand their kids, like, in front of everyone, like, we don't talk like that, standard English only, da 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 da. That is actually like denouncing parts of who they are culturally. So I have a lesson where we take images from magazines and newspapers. They just cut out people's, like, faces or their bodies, and they create dialogue. So they create dialogue between two different characters. And in their speech bubbles, I let them use slang. So I've learned so many slang words from this activity. And then I make them rewrite whatever is in these dialogue bubbles in standard or formal English, formal language. So we call it home language versus academic language. So this way I'm like, you know what? When you are in the cafeteria, if you outside, if you are waiting on the bus, if you, are at home, whatever, it's okay to talk like that. But when you're in school and you are before an audience, I need you to use your academic language. And when you present it like that, like, you provide spaces for them to be who they are, but you also are like, all right, it's time to code switch. Like, you are defending why you should go to middle school. We are not having home language in this space. They are more apt to hold on to that and basically do it. So I think it's important to teach code switching. And if you are not familiar with code switching, I would definitely do some research on that, because it's powerful work. And that's a way of being culturally responsible. You want to crush kids and what they come with. You just want to teach them, like, when and where to use it. All right. Does anybody have any questions about that before I move on? And thank you for staying with me. I know this is a little lengthy. I really hope that this is triggering a lot of thoughts in your mind and you're getting ideas to literally reimagine your classroom, because that's the purpose of this. Does anybody have any questions before I move forward or comments? Okay. I haven't been checking the chat, so I'm just taking questions aloud because it's a lot to manage. So something that I really want to show you all that has, if there is any talk structure that has transformed my classroom and transformed the classrooms in my building, it is talk moves. Can you raise your virtual hand if you've ever heard of talk moves? Yay, some people have. That's awesome. Okay. Okay, so talk moves are an innovative pedagogy that uses silent signals as well as oral modes of communication to enhance and deepen instruction. So we talked about some verbal and some nonverbal ways to communicate. This structure puts them together. And sometimes there is space where you just use the nonverbal. You don't always have to talk. And I would like to show you on this slide, I have pictures of my actual students, and this is them in action using talk moves. So in the upper left-hand picture, the young boy, he is engaging in a debate, actually. We were having a debate in reading class, and you see his hand placement, and I'm gonna show you, we're gonna practice some actual talk moves. We have the girl at the bottom, Nadia. She actually has her mirrors on, and they are mimicking what she's teaching. So she's a student teacher in that photo. And then to the right, we have Nathan, and he is standing up. And I think he was getting ready to disagree because that's one of them. And he is speaking before the class too. So this strategy bridges the gap between the teacher and the students responding. It has definitely increased participation. I have 100% participation every day, all day because of talk moves, 100%. We also have a no opt-out policy too. So when you introduce this, like the norm is everyone does it all the time. There are no exceptions. And it really helps students when they are doing peer-to-peer teaching. It makes your classroom environment just feel like healthy and exciting, and then ultimately improves academic achievement. I first learned about talk moves on the teaching channel. Raise your virtual hand if you ever watched the teaching channel. Yay! The teaching channel is chocked full of resources. I'm a nerd and I love learning, so I'm just always seeking new things. But I took what I found on the teaching channel and then I kind of expanded it and made it my own. So that's just like a plug for them. Y'all want to watch it at some time when you're free. And this is a picture of one of my students too during a literature circle. And the motion she has up is the question symbol. So this is actually like American Sign Language. Question is Q, and that's what we use if you have a question. So she's within her group, and she is saying, oh, I have a question, and they give her space to answer it. So that way it doesn't feel chaotic when students are working together. So I have a video to show before I teach you these 4 talk moves right here. All right. So in this video, students are at the end of 5th grade and they are reflecting on how it felt to go from 4th grade where they did not use talk moves to 5th grade where they did.
Arden's reading class, and we will be talking about talk moves.
Okay, students, what are talk moves to you?
Talk moves to me are a way to engage in class without having to raise your hand and like say something else just to have a comment in class. Talk moves to me is something that will give you attention to the person who is using it for you to like understand what they're saying.
Talk moves to me are like like sign language, like so in case your teacher is talking to other students and you have to like use the bathroom, you can raise your hand without speaking to them because they might not look at you or know like have time to listen to what you're saying because they're helping another student.
Talk moves are to me is a form of talking without talking and like to engage yourself, because if you raise your hand for like a question, you're just gonna be sitting on your question, and if you do a talk move, she can just look at you and nod your head.
Okay, great. Can you all please talk about how talk moves have helped you during class discussions?
Talk moves help me pay attention to what the person who's trying to discuss something. It helps me pay attention to what they're saying, and because I typically daydream in class, it helps me engage in the conversation.
Wonderful.
Talk moves, like when I use talk moves, it's easier for me to feel like into the conversation and into whatever the speaker is saying. Because if I'm just sitting here, some people just can't pay attention when they're just sitting still.
Talk moves to me, like, it engages me, and I don't like to sit back in class, and I have sometimes ADHD, and I like to move a lot, and so I raise my hand with a talk move, and it helps me out. Talk moves helps me, as Nadia said, to engage to what the speaker is saying. Also, like Gina, I love to daydream a lot. It just pulls me back in to what we are discussing about.
Great. Lastly, can each of you tell me what your favorite talk move is and why?
Hello, my favorite talk move is the agree talk move, and it's my favorite because when someone's talking in class and you agree on what they're saying, you don't just hold it back and so you can just do the agree sign, and so that they'll know that you agree with them and that they feel like they're right with their answers.
My favorite talk move is the disagree one, is because if you don't agree with what the person is saying, you can help them by saying, I disagree with whoever because, I respectfully disagree with you because, and then you will give your answer of why.
My favorite talk move is the add-on symbol, because that way you're not raising your hand and the teacher thinks you have a different opinion and you want to like say something else. That way you can just like say you need to add on something, so you have like a more detailed description of whatever you're trying to say.
My favorite talk move is the disagree one, because it's a form of like respect of your opinion, or like if you say something wrong, you can be respectful to what you're saying and to not like be rude or anything, to like be nice and like help educate them.
My favorite talk move, as Raina said, is the agreeance. I like the agreeance because it's like it lets other people know that you agree with them, so that it's not like they're talking to no one. It's like they're just talking to themselves. But when you use the agree symbol, then they know that you agree with them and that you're interacting with them.
All right, so that's just a snippet of how they felt about it. And I hope that kind of gives you an idea from the student perspective of how it can work and how it's effective in your classroom. So on the slide, you see that I have about, I think the last time I counted, there were 18. Like, there's a lot of talk moves, and I roll them out like about 4 or 5 at a time per week, so it doesn't feel overwhelming. And at the beginning of a school year, I use it so that they can see me as a model, and then in time it becomes natural to them. I've had parents who have told me that when they're talking to their children, they're like agreeing with them and doing different talk moves that I've taught because it's just natural. They might even do it to the TV when they're watching it. So it's just really cool. The first one, and I would like for everybody to do this with me, please. The first one is good job. So in my class and in the school, everybody stands when they speak. If you say something and we're like, wow, that's awesome, we do this. So you put your thumbs and you just shoot them back and forth. This means good job, good job. And when you are standing, which can be vulnerable, and everybody in a room is doing that, it makes the student, one, feel great about themselves, but also want to keep talking and dig deeper. So everybody's like this, and it's just natural. I don't say, give them a good job, talk move, they just do it, okay? And it actually produces like an energy in the room, and it helps your lesson to flow a lot easier. The next one is agree. So you're going to take your thumb and your pinky and you shoot it back between you and the person. This means, yes, I was thinking the same thing. I agree with you. And kids love to see someone in agreement. I've taught talk moves to the staff at my school, and we use this during staff meeting. So if someone says something and we're like, yes, I wanted to say that, but you said it for me, we'll just agree. And there have been times when we also disagree, but you don't have to say it. And it's more, I guess, it's a safer feeling to express those things by just gesturing. All right, so we have good job, thumb shooting back and forth. And then we have agree, pinky and thumb back and forth between you and that person. And then we have disagree, which is just an X. If you incorporate talk moves, I would say don't do this one until the very end, because it can be a little bit deflating. And if your classroom environment is not supportive, it could shut students down. So what this looks like, and there's actually, if they're called on to speak, they usually have to say, oh, I think you did a good job because, or I respectfully agree with you because, or I respectfully disagree with you because. To put respectfully before disagree, it lessens the negative stigma that can be associated with it. So if someone says something and they are wrong, like if I'm like, what's 2 times 8? And you say 12 and everybody does this, you might be like, goodness, I'm so embarrassed. But if you introduce this talk move last and you have a healthy classroom environment, what you will notice is this actually caused them to rethink. So I've had people like share something and we're all kind of like, that is not right. But they'll be like, no, hold on, wait. And you can see them processing, recalculating, and they'll come back and say, I meant to say this, or they'll change their answer. And if they're completely clueless, they learn to advocate for themselves and say, I need help. So we have good job, we have agree, we have disagree. When you disagree, you absolutely have to say, I respectfully disagree with you because. That's if you're called on. The last one I wanted to show you all today is more detail. Raise your virtual hand if you have called on a student. You're just so excited that they're participating, and then they say something and you're like, that's it. So what this does is it prompts them to give more, dig deeper. So we just simply roll the hands. You ball your fist and roll them. This is like, ooh, I need you to dig a little deeper. And when a whole class is doing that, you can see them. They're searching for, okay, how can I make this clearer? How can I provide some more evidence? Or how can I relate this, to a personal experience I've had, whatever. Okay, so we have good job, keep going, I like what you said. Agree, I was thinking the same thing. Disagree, I respectfully disagree with you. And then more detail. I don't know if you all noticed in the video with the students that when they said because, they clapped. That's not on here, but we have a because clap. The clap signifies that they are adding detail or supporting it with evidence. So if they say, I respectfully disagree with you because, like, as a teacher, I love to hear claps going on around my room because I'm like, yes, evidence. So they know that way. It kind of triggers their mind to say, I can't just make a claim and not support it. And then you'll notice that other students, and this is K through 12, if they don't clap, I mean, eventually it probably will become innate. Maybe 12th graders don't need this, I don't know. But in the beginning, they probably do. But if they don't have a because, the students will just clap. And that's like their trigger to say, you didn't give me any detail. I don't even have to say anything. Like somebody might stand up and make a claim, and then that's it. Everybody's just looking. And then somebody might clap, and they're like, oh, okay, let me keep going. So that's not on here, but that's also one of the moves. I would not dare overwhelm you with all of them. If I get the contact list for you all, I can send you a sheet that I have that has the name of the move and the description. I also have a YouTube channel. Oh, and I was going to show you that really quickly. And I know my time is winding down. This is a video that my students made. I have students who manage my YouTube channel, so sometimes the steadiness of the camera and the quality is a little lacking, but it kind of gives you a little glimpse of what it's like. They're going over talk moves.
What do talk moves mean to you? Everybody, get along.
It's hard in class. Talk moves help me for like when I instead of actually telling them I agree with them, this helps me instead of interrupting them. And whenever I'm trying to say you're doing good, this helps me. That's all. Oh, and when I'm disagreeing with somebody, I can go like this. It's easier.
Who can make our hands clap?
She can make our hands clap.
You know. What does it look like if you agree with what someone is saying? Please look at Amy. What does it look like if you would like to add on to what someone is saying? If you disagree with what someone is saying? If you want them to add more detail? If you cannot hear them? If you want them to repeat what they said? If you want them to slow down? What else is there? What does your because clap look like? Because. What else?
Reread.
Okay, what does read look like? What does read look like? Tap, tap.
Okay, so that was just a short glimpse of what looks like in my classroom. If you will notice, one of my students was standing in her chair. When we stand to speak, they can stand on the floor, they can stand in the chair, they can stand on the table. It's whatever they want to do. Like I give them the autonomy to choose. I actually got that from the Ron Clark Academy. I don't know if you all are familiar. Can you raise your virtual hand if you've heard of Ron Clark? Yay! So when I went to his school, that was something I picked up because he does have professional development for teachers. He's in Atlanta, Georgia. Perhaps your district will pay for you to experience that because our district did. And I don't force them to stay in a chair. I feel like when you stand, there's a certain presence that comes with the way you articulate your ideas. So now it's just a norm. Also, I had a drum, if you noticed. Typically, I don't drum, but that video was made at the very beginning of the year. I have a drum to help keep, like I literally have a rhythm, so to speak, to how I teach. Like having all these different communication structures, like we're in and out of things all the time as we go throughout lessons. So the drum, I also got this idea from Ron Clark, was initially just to absorb some of the hyperactivity from my students who were super ADHD. Like they needed some leadership. Like they were having some terrible behavior, and I'm like, you want the spotlight, but you're getting it in the wrong way. So I made them a drummer. The drumming job rotates. I do not teach people how to drum. You either have rhythm or you don't. I'm at the point now where I have 2 drummers and they are able to simultaneously like help the class. So what happens is it's a small drum. I get them from Ross. They're also on Amazon. I miss stores being open. Anyway, I get them from Ross. They're about $15 to $20. And They sit on their desk. So anytime somebody gets a cheer, as you saw, there was a cheer in that video, they have to be ready. So you have to do the work and you have to stay ready to drum. And when I tell you it really, 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 really helps my behaviorally challenged students, and I have done this all the way up to high school, it's a beautiful technique. That's all I can really say. And if you check out Ron Clark, you can see his students doing that as well. And there's actually one more thing I want to show you in terms of a video, and I am about to wrap up. I know it is noon and you all are probably hungry and ready to go, but let me show you this really quickly. This is just more for a visual. This is what it looks like to have a drummer in your classroom.
Because we do a lot of affirmations, chants, and cheers, and all of this is to help them understand that they are powerful and they can do it. So that's the initial hook. And once I get that instilled in them, then they start to really take it as their own, and then they want to show off. So when visitors come to our classroom, they want to show them how great they are, and that translates to, wow, your class is so disciplined. But it's really a belief system. Like, the self-fulfilling prophecy is real. It's like, I want them to see what I see, and then they internalize that for themselves, and that really impacts their academic achievement too. Yes, I believe in developing the whole child.
Okay, so if you could see in that video, there was a male student who was drumming. We were singing a cheer. They were doing a morning greeting. They sang it. They went back to their seats. So that's just kind of what it looks like in action. All right, so wrapping up, reimagining your classroom for culturally responsive education. I just give a couple of little tips about what your room can literally look like. So children grow into the intellectual life around them. Your space helps promote this type of practice. So right here we have aesthetics of your room. So having posters of social movements, like depending on your subject area, your grade level, whatever you teach, I would have those like certain monumental things, like historical events or famous people you studied. I would literally put them on your wall and make sure there's diversity in who you have up there. So I'm the type of teacher, at the beginning of the year, I don't have a bunch of stuff all over and anchor charts everywhere. Like, I can't even handle that type of stimulation. So as we go throughout the year, our learning experiences become aesthetics of the classroom. And I think that really helps. Plus, they can kind of reference it. Artwork from students' homes. I've had students who their parents are artists. They are artists themselves, and we put that up around the room. Photographs from their personal homes and photographs from like field trips or experiments you've done or things that have taken place in your classroom or in your school. That really helps to build this type of environment, as well as quotes and poems. So we have we have a quote of the week, and it is the responsibility of someone in the class to find it. And what we do is after we have learned the quote for a week and memorized it, because Friday we have a memorization experience, we put it in the ceiling tiles so they can look up and see all the quotes that we have memorized throughout the year. That really helps, like when they might feel discouraged and they've learned a quote that supports a growth mindset, they're able to just look up and see it. As well as in ELA, we do things where they author poems and whatever. Some kids just like to do it on their own. We also put those around the room. So that's just like a quick little tip to help build the visual part of the learning environment. And then next I have playing music during work time. I'm sure, raise your virtual hand if you do that. Like, I love music. And oftentimes, like, it could just be like soft music or whatever. Or sometimes there's space for like music that gets you going. Play music during your work time. Play music to transition. Depending on your grade level, maybe you switch classes, or maybe they switch reading groups or math groups or whatever. Let them know when that song, like a particular song comes on, get up and move, and you have this amount of time to get there. That really helps with management, and it also builds a nice energy in the room. All in responses, we've kind of covered some of those. Chants and cheers. I taught you the bomb cheer. I wonder if you know it. Tick, 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 boom, you're the bomb. Y'all have been the bomb, because I know I've been talking a lot. And then lastly, use a drum. So I shared with you a part of that video of my student using a drum. All right, so we are getting ready to wrap this up. What I would like to do is teach you one more cheer that you can use in your classroom. It's called the good job cheer. I did not make this up. I did make up the bomb cheer. I did not make this up. This is kind of a universal one. I don't know if your schools do it, but it goes like this. Good job, good job. Good job. Oh, you can't hear. Have y'all not been able to hear this whole time? I hope the lenses in which you all see culturally responsive education are clear and renewed. So I want you to just think, okay, for today's presentation, what are 3 things that you might be able to start doing? Maybe it's allowing cooperative overlapping. Maybe it's having a drummer. Maybe it's allowing children to stand and speak when they have something to share. Maybe it's talk moves. There's a lot of things I know that I covered, but just think, maybe what are 3 things that I could start doing? And I would encourage you to jot them down so you don't forget. Alrighty. Next, I would like for you to think of 2 things that you were already doing in your class or your school that support culturally responsive education, that support children being able to elevate their voices. And maybe you already had some talk structures in place. Like, what are those? Give yourself some credit for what you're already doing and then continue doing it. So jot that down. What are 2 things you want to keep doing? Thank you for all the people who are responding in the chat. Don't forget to respond in your journals too. Code switching, yeah. All right, and lastly, based on what I have shared with you during the agree and disagree experience, and just what Zaretta shared in her video, and anything else in the presentation that might have struck you like, ooh, that's not best practice. Is there anything that you want to stop doing? Were you did you identify when I said that teachers reprimanded students for using slang? Do you want to stop doing that and just teach them the difference between academic and home language? Like, is there anything that stood out to you that you're like, I need to stop doing that? Write that down. Mhm. Wonderful. I appreciate all the responses in the chat. that makes me feel more connected to you in this virtual space, that you were able to take away some really powerful things. And whatever you wrote down, that's for you. That's for you to plan forward and to really either feel proud of what you're doing or realize that you have some room to grow. So as we wrap up, I just want to share this last quote with you. As you probably can tell, I love quotes. Oprah Winfrey said, "Great communication begins with connection." It is my prayer that all of you are able to connect with your students and staff members on a level that is below the surface in order to help build relationships and push academic growth. These are 3 books that I read and have read that really inform this type of work that I do. So we have Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain. I shared that with you from Zaretta Hammond. Another really amazing book, especially for those of you who are in ELA, is a book called Cultivating Genius. It's an equity framework for culturally and historically responsive literacy by Goldie Muhammad. It's really, really great. And it has a lot of pictures and like student examples in it too, which I feel like educators appreciate. And then lastly, we have the book by Christopher Emdin. He's actually been to our city several times to give talks. It's called For White Folks Who Teach in the Hood and the Rest of Y'all Too, Reality, Pedagogy, and Urban Education. That's where I got the whole concept of co-generative dialogues from. So those are 3 wonderful reads that I would highly recommend. Lastly, I do have a few videos on my YouTube channel if you want to go back and revisit anything that I have shared today. If you just type in my name, Candace Harden, you'll be able to find me. And then lastly, if you want to follow my class and I on Instagram, our handle is @MissHarden'sHeroes. If you would like to follow me on Twitter or reach out for any reason, I am definitely open to that. My handle is C_Harden10. And then following that is my school district's email. So let me know if you have any further questions. Or if you have any quick questions right now, I will take those too. Otherwise, you can just reach out that way. And that concludes my workshop with you all. I hope that you are exiting this virtual space renewed and with some wonderful ideas to implement into your classrooms. And I hope that everybody stays safe and well during this pandemic.